Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into Santa Maria rentals? I mean, think about it. Can you really find a decent room without going broke in California? We're going to see if Santa Maria lives up to the hype. But we're going beyond the usual apartment hunting websites today.
Yeah, that's a good question, especially in California's market.
So where are we getting this insider info?
Well, today we're looking at moveandstay.com. They're a website. They've been around for over 25
Oh,
years.
I know Move and Stay. They help people find places to rent in Asia, right?
Exactly. For short-term stays like a day, a week, even a month.
Okay, so Asia to California, that's a bit of a jump. Maybe they're branching out.
Right. It's a little unexpected, but you know what? It could actually give us a really unique perspective.
Yeah, totally. Their experience with short-term rentals might translate well to understanding room rentals
Hmm.
because those also cater to people who need flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what does moveandstay.com tell us about room rentals in Santa Maria?
Well, first thing that caught my eye was the price. They're talking about rooms under $600.
And not just, way out in the boonies.
Yeah, that's definitely lower than a lot of other California cities. And it makes you wonder why. I mean, Santa Maria's a bit off the beaten path, right? Compared to, like, Los Angeles or San Francisco.
Okay, so maybe that's the secret. Location, location, location.
It's definitely a factor. Being further from those big job centers, yeah, it could keep housing costs down. But you have to think about the trade-offs, like, commuting or maybe fewer job opportunities right there in Santa Maria.
That's a good point. But hey, if you work remotely or just want to change of pace, maybe that's not a deal breaker. I mean, the guide mentions a modern room going for $565. Seriously. That's unheard of in California.
Yeah, it's a tempting price for sure. But it's always smart to look beyond just the numbers. Think about the neighborhood, what amenities are included, all that really matters for your like day-to-day living experience.
Right, right. Because a cheap room in a bad area, well, that's not really a bargain in the end. So let's talk neighborhoods. MoveAndStay.com gives a pretty diverse picture of Santa Maria. They mentioned downtown, which sounds, well, lively, full of energy.
Yeah, downtown areas usually mean you can walk everywhere, easy access to entertainment, nightlife. That's usually a big draw for like younger renters or people who like being, in the middle of everything.
Then there's Orcut, which they describe as more laid back, family friendly, maybe better if you want a quieter life.
Yeah, Orcott could be a good fit for families or people who prefer a suburban lifestyle. More space, parks, good schools. But of course, being further out from the city center probably means relying more on a car to get around.
And that brings us to another thing, amenities. The guide talks a lot about like in-unit laundry and public transport access. Oh, in-unit laundry, that's a game changer for me.
Oh, yeah.
For real.
Mm.
No more hauling your laundry to the laundromat. Ugh.
I hear you. In-unit laundry has become like a must-have for a lot of renters, especially in a place like Santa Maria where you might be driving more anyway. It's all
Yeah.
about convenience, right?
Totally. And about that public transport, having decent options could be huge if you don't want to rely on a car, especially with gas prices these days.
You're telling me. And think about it. Good public transportation can make a city feel so much more connected, accessible, especially if you're new to the area.
Okay, so we've got affordable rooms, different neighborhoods, and amenities that actually make life easier. Santa Maria is starting to sound pretty good.
It is. It's shaping up to be an interesting option. But hold on. Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's see what moveandstay.com says about, actually finding these rooms and what to watch out for as a renter in Santa Maria.
Good idea. Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Right, the practical stuff. Welcome back, everyone, to our deep dive into Santa Maria room rentals. It's kind of funny. We're using moveandstay.com as our source today.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. They're all about Asian short-term rentals usually. But hey, they seem to know what they're talking about.
Right. We've already found out about some seriously affordable rooms, and the neighborhoods seem pretty diverse, too.
For sure. But before we all pack our bags and move to Santa Maria, let's see what moveandstay.com says about, actually snagging one of these rentals and what to watch out for as a renter.
Good point. They've got some tips for first-time renters, which could be really helpful in Santa Maria because you might find a mix of, like, traditional long-term rentals and those shorter-term options.
Okay, so what's their insider advice? What do we need to know?
Well, they really stress being proactive, asking the right questions before you commit to anything.
Makes sense.
Like they say, make sure you know what's included in the rent. Are utilities covered? What about internet?
Oh, yeah, you don't want any surprises there,
Yeah.
especially with internet. I mean, who could live without internet these days?
Exactly. And they also say, don't be afraid to actually check out the room, the building, like really look around. Ask the landlord to fix anything that bothers you before you sign that lease.
Right. Because a fresh coat of paint can only hide so much. Better to be safe than sorry later.
Totally. And speaking of avoiding problems, they remind us that, California has laws to protect renters from unfair practices. It's super important to know your rights.
So where can people go to find out about those rights?
The Department of Consumer Affairs has a website. It's got tons of info about tenant rights in California. Definitely worth checking out before you sign anything.
Good to know. Okay, so we've got the legal stuff covered, but how do we actually find these amazing room rentals in Santa Maria? Does moveandstay.com have any tips on that?
They recommend a two-pronged approach. So online platforms, but also like good old-fashioned networking.
Ooh, mixing tech with human connection. Sounds like a recipe for success.
Right. So for online searching, they suggest sites like Craigslist, Zillow, and Rent.com. But here's the thing. They say filter your searches not just by price and location, but also by lease duration.
Ah, that makes sense. They're the short-term rental
Yeah.
experts, right? So they know how to find flexible options.
Exactly. And then don't underestimate networking. Talk to friends, family, coworkers, even that barista at your favorite coffee shop. You never know who might have a lead.
Uh-huh. I love it. It's like a real-life treasure hunt for the perfect room.
Totally. And check out local community groups too, both online and in-person ones. They can be gold mines for finding rentals and getting tips on neighborhoods.
So we've got our online sleuthing hats on and our charming smiles ready to go. But I'm curious, beyond the practical stuff, what about the social side of things? Is Santa Maria a welcoming place? Will I be stuck eating ramen alone in my room every night?
And that's where moveandstay.com's experience with those short-term rentals really comes in handy. Because they get it. Finding a place to live isn't just about like a roof over your head. It's about finding a community.
So how does that apply to finding a room in Santa Maria?
They say, think about the social dynamics of a potential living situation. Like, are there common areas where people hang out? Can you connect with roommates or neighbors? Those things really matter for your well-being.
Yeah, totally. Especially if you're new to a city, having a sense of community makes a huge difference in feeling at home.
Absolutely. And they also say, look for places that match your interests, your lifestyle. Like, if you're a hiker, maybe find a room near hiking trails or a house with roommates who also love the outdoors.
It's about belonging, not just being a temporary tenant.
Exactly. Whether you stay for a few months or a few years, that sense of belonging can change everything.
This is all great advice, but I gotta ask, is there a catch? With these affordable rooms and welcoming communities, is Santa Maria too good to be true?
That's a good question. Santa Maria does sound pretty awesome, but remember, no place is perfect. There are always downsides.
Okay, so let's get real. What are some of the, let's say, less glamorous sides of Santa Maria that we should know about?
Well, first off, even though housing costs are lower than in big cities, California is still expensive overall.
So even if rent is reasonable, other things like groceries, transportation, utilities, those could still add up.
Right, you got to factor in those extra costs when you think about affordability.
And what about jobs? We talked about this a bit earlier. But if you're not working remotely, are there enough jobs in Santa Maria to make it a long-term option?
That's a big one. Santa Maria's economy is mostly driven by agriculture, tourism, and the military. So if your career's in something else, you might not find many jobs there.
So maybe it's better for remote workers, entrepreneurs, or people okay with commuting to other cities for work.
Yeah, possibly. And speaking of commuting, that's another potential downside. If you're using public transport or driving everywhere, those distances can get long, especially if you work or hang out outside of Santa Maria.
So a cheap room might come with the hidden cost of time and gas money.
Exactly. It's all about weighing the pros and cons and figuring out what you're willing to compromise on.
Okay, so we've seen the potential downsides of Santa Maria, but I'm still curious. How does Santa Maria fit into the bigger picture of California's crazy housing market? And what might the future hold for it? Okay, so we've uncovered a lot about Santa Maria, from surprisingly affordable rooms to, potential downsides, like limited job opportunities. But where does Santa Maria fit into this whole California housing market thing? And what does the future hold for this interesting little city?
Yeah. The million-dollar question, right? Predicting the future of any housing market, it's tricky. But there are some key factors we can look at. Santa Maria being relatively affordable, it's attracting attention, but that could actually lead to, more demand.
So it's like A good thing that could turn bad, more people wanting to live there, and then boom, prices go up. No more affordability.
Exactly. It's like economists call it induced demand. Basically, if everyone starts flocking to Santa Maria for cheap California living, we might see rents go up.
So is Santa Maria doomed to become another victim of the California housing crisis?
Not necessarily, no. It really depends on how they manage growth and development. If they do it right, with smart urban planning, maybe they can handle those pressures.
Okay, so what would that look like? Smart urban planning.
Think about it. Mixed income housing developments, smaller units, maybe even some creative solutions like co-living spaces. Remember, moveandstay.com, they're all about short-term rentals, so they probably know about these trends.
Co-living. That's interesting. Is it just a fancy way to say sharing an apartment?
It's a bit more than that. Co-living usually involves like intentional community building, maybe shared values, interests. It can be a good way to, combat loneliness and save money. We're seeing more and more of it, especially in cities with crazy expensive housing.
So it's like a built-in social network for renters.
Yeah.
That could be awesome for people new to Santa Maria.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so development's important. But what else could affect Santa Maria's rental future?
Well, economic conditions are always huge. If the local economy is doing well, creating jobs, that attracts more people, which could push up rental prices.
Right, booming economy usually means a booming housing market.
Mm.
And I guess things like transportation and even climate change could play a role.
For sure. Better transportation to big cities could make Santa Maria even more desirable. But climate change stuff, like droughts or wildfires, could make people hesitant to move there.
So it's all connected, like trying to predict the weather, but for housing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But even with all this uncertainty, one thing's for sure. Being informed and adaptable is key for any renter, especially in a market like Santa Maria's.
So whether you're looking for those affordable rooms or that welcoming community vibe, it's all about doing your research, staying flexible, and being open to new possibilities.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And what's funny? MoveandStay.com, even though they focus on Asia, they gave us a lot to think about. It shows that sometimes the most unexpected sources can give you fresh perspectives.
Totally. This deep dive has been packed with info, but I think we've got a much better grasp on Santa Maria's room rental scene now, from the potential for affordable living to the importance of community and, the unknowns of the future. It's definitely a city to watch.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe one day MoveAndStay.com will have a whole section dedicated to Santa Maria right next to their Asian listings.
That would be amazing. Well, to all our listeners out there, if you're interested in Santa Maria's charm and those tempting prices, keep exploring. Do your research, connect with the locals, and hey, maybe you'll find your perfect California room waiting for you. Until next time, happy renting, everyone.